It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, hands up. Yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in to another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Lots of different ways to listen and be a part of the show in real time or after the fact. Just go find any of our past episodes on our podcast feed, which can be found wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Just search for the Full Court Press, my name, Jason's name. Or you can easily find us on our podcasts on our website and on the mobile app. And if you want to chime in on the things we're talking about today, 435-339-0321. It's Young Power Sports of Logan text line. And Jason is just as it's been. It seems like as soon as we get off the air, something comes across the wire and this shortened show time that we have, but we're still committing to just the 1 hour.
Yeah.
But the news that happened yesterday, just a little bit after we got off the air, Utah State men's basketball participating in a multi-team event in Charleston, South Carolina, and some notable names, but they haven't really been great basketball programs as of late.
Yeah, the reaction from the fan base when it was reported was an almighty or worse, to be honest. There were not a whole lot of people impressed with this field of teams. And I didn't want to be too reactionary because I looked at the teams like, I recognize all those names. Because Utah State, to go through the full details before going too much into the reactions, because the Charleston Classic has in the past been like an 8-team tournament, and they play a bracket where everyone gets to play 3 games, and it's been a pretty decent field of teams. This year they're going a bit of a different route. You're looking at still 8 teams, but 2 brackets, and ultimately only 2 games played by any of the teams. Basically, it's 2 separate but happening at the same time in the location brackets. So there are 4 teams competing in this first bracket, which is, I believe, Georgia, Wake Forest, Xavier, and West Virginia. And then Utah State is included in a second bracket where it's them, Boston College, Tulane, and Davidson. And all of the games between all of these 8 teams will take place on November 21st and 23rd. So there's a 1-day break in between this 2-game tournament, which you tend not to see breaks in between games.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Unless it's a 3-game tournament, which that's somewhat common. But as I was looking back through some of the Aggies' previous multi-team events, these MTEs, like they had a 3-game in 3 days MTE, and they've had those somewhat regularly, 3 games in 3 days or 3 games in 4 days. Getting a break in between these games, somewhat interesting for both of these brackets. So that's the field. Like you recognize Boston College and Tulane and Davidson. Those are all teams that you would recognize from basketball. They're teams that have had success at times in their history. But you look at them last year, they're all not particularly great teams. I used, I think, Ken Palm. In my article, I did a quick one on Cache Valley Daily to update a lot of this. Actually, I didn't put the numbers in there. I just had their records last year. Boston College was 12-19. They beat Boise State. That was probably one of their best wins. And funnily enough, that may have kept Boise State out of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, maybe.
In part. Tulane went 19-15, and Davidson went 17-16.
And looking at their net rankings on these schools, because that's another metric that is good to compare teams across each other. Boston College, arguably coming from the biggest conference, right, of this group, they were 202
in
the net.
Yeah, they were in the 200s, and then I think Tulane and Davidson barely cracked the top 150.
Yeah, Tulane at 151, Davidson at 155, and Utah State at 43. Big disparity between USU and the other three teams.
Yeah, so Utah State is basically the one team in this group that's like that. It's a team that's been consistently good over the last few years. Very few of these other teams really have that in the recent past, or especially last year, I should say. So that's what's kind of a little frustrating, I think, to the fans when they look at those initial numbers, those rankings, what those teams did last year, because that's our best indication at this point of what they're going to be next year. And it's not exactly inspiring, especially when we're at a time when mid-majors really need to find ways to increase their strength of schedule, because there has just been this almighty push of getting more and more high major teams in there because of strength of schedule. And you got to be able to, with a lot of conferences unable to have quality conference games, the Mountain West does bypass that a little bit by having quad one conference games. But to get to the level where you look at what San Diego State's been able to do, they're getting lots of quality non-conference games. And to be able to kind of bridge the gap between being a mid-major and being a high major, you need to be able to have quality non-conference games. And this just isn't it. I've defended the MTEs Utah State has had in the past. People say, oh, it's not that good. But it's like, you look at the teams and you're like, yeah, this team won 25 games last year. This team was, last year North Texas was didn't they end up barely as a quad one game or something like that? They were in the top 100 of the net. St. Bonaventure wasn't a bad team. So when people had kind of a similar reaction to last year's MTE, it was like, hold on a second. These are good mid-major teams.
Right. They may not be as name recognizable, but they were good teams. They're good programs. It turned out benefiting the Aggies.
Yeah.
This has maybe, Boston College, they're not really known for great basketball, but they do come from the ACC. Tulane comes from a basketball conference that has produced good teams. Davidson, if anything else, we know they host the first four, but they have produced some good teams in the past. But last year, neither of those three teams are really that compelling. Last year, St. Bonaventure ends up at 105 in the net. North Texas, they finished at 64 in the net. So Utah State participating in some of these games with teams that can play well, but may not have that name recognition. And that's kind of what's trying to be balanced, is get something that works both if possible, but if not, the strength of your schedule is the most important thing when you're trying to schedule for what could affect you in March.
Yeah, Utah State had a solid strength of schedule in the non-conference last year. And that largely, the work they did in the non-conference largely got them into the tournament with how high they were able to push in the net, with some of the wins they were able to get. And with a decently strong first half of their Mountain West slate, that pushed them into the NCAA tournament. And so this one MTE isn't their whole strength of schedule. There's been somewhat of an overreaction over that. But you want to be able to get those good MTEs, because this is one of the best chances to get those high quality games aside from neutral site games with power conference teams. And I wonder if that's the direction if Jared Calhoun is going. It's try and get into an MTE that he likes, that you feel like his team can do well in, and then try and schedule as many neutral site games against good competition as he can. That may be more of his strategy, because he's in the past known that he doesn't really like the 3 games in 3 days or the 3 games in 4 days format that a lot of these prestigious MTEs have. And he's had more of a preference for these 2-game multi-team events. And so that may very well be where he's gone with this. Hey, look, want to just get one of these 2-game MTEs and then, go with the rest of the schedule, try and find enough home games within a bunch of neutral site games against high major teams. And if that's the strategy, if it works, it works. Not going to knock it. Yeah. But that's something that's where I have to wait to judge the non-conference schedule building of Jared Calhoun, because there's one part of the picture that I see, and what I see isn't great. They're in a not very good multi-team event based on what we know of these teams. It could get a lot better, but odds are it's not going to be that drastically better. And it honestly could technically be worse if these teams don't live up to what they were last year. So there's some concern over strength of schedule with what got scheduled with this MTE, but there is a whole lot more that can be better for Utah State. But they got to figure out a way to do it, because it is becoming harder and harder to schedule really good teams and high major teams, because they're less and less inclined to face mid-major teams, because losing to those mid-major teams can hurt their chances at getting in to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's these power conference schools are going to want to schedule more against each other among the other power conference schools. So it's the field doesn't really look great right now, but there is still a school from the ACC on there. Utah State can go somewhere in a neutral site and beat an ACC school. That still is nice on the resume. It may not really boost the net ranking very well, but it still plays well in some circles. And this is a chance to go get some wins on the road or on a neutral site away from home, and in a short amount of time, play a game, turn around, do some film work, get in the gym for a little bit, and prepare for the next opponent. So there's still value in doing these multi-team events. And while this isn't maybe the strongest field, this is still an opportunity for Utah State to pick up some wins and hopefully get some wins by healthy margins. Because if they may not be the best in their net ranking, if you could still get a healthy victory, double digits, that also plays well in how your net ranking scores.
See, and I think those can be positive, especially if they get these wins by large margins. But if that's what you're aiming for in a multi-team event, schedule a week multi-team event so you can get blowout wins. Like, sure, the Big 12 strategy has worked for the Big 12, where you schedule a bunch of cupcakes and beat them by 30 points, inflate your net, and then the whole conference looks good. But I just, I don't buy, with Boston College and being in the ACC. Like, nobody looks at, the bracketology and says, oh, Utah State beat an ACC team. They don't look at it that way. They say, who's the ACC team? They say Boston College. Oh, yeah, they were 200 in the net. They suck. They had a losing record by 7 games. You get zero credit for being an ACC team if they're bad. Doesn't matter. They're a bad team. And so, these teams have to be good.
Yeah, that's true to a degree. But if on your resume it says you beat an ACC team in a neutral site versus beating a team from, I don't know, the MEAC or something at a neutral site.
But if the MEAC team is ranked 78th in the net and the ACC team is ranked 200th, college basketball fans and media are smart enough to know the difference. They won't put that ACC team on your list of best wins. They'll put it on your list of bad losses like they did with Boise State last year.
It's not so much about appealing to fans as you're still trying to appeal to a group of people who gather together in a room in early March, mid-March. And yes, they look at a variety of different metrics, and one of those is the net, and just, what is the baseline there of how was this team? How good was this team or not? And so you could be in a mid-level conference and still have a very strong net ranking, be considered a good team. But you can also be a team from a power conference and have a bad record, and that can still look like a bad loss, like it worked for Boise State. But at the end of the day, it's still, you went and played a team from a power conference, and that team has to play other good teams in a power conference. So even though that team might not look that great, you still went out and tried to schedule a tougher, quote unquote, opponent out of a conference that should be stronger than yours is.
Yeah, but I think in the end, there's just so many analytics tied up with bracketology and with the selection committee, whereas even if you're from a power conference, if you're a bad team, that just mixes into the net, it mixes into the KenPom and all the different metrics they use. If you're a bad team, it lowers your strength of schedule. If you play teams that are ranked low, your strength of schedule is lower, and whatever positive there may be from you beat an ACC team is lost in a lack of strength of schedule, which is already working against mid-major teams because there's already that bias. And if the numbers start to back up that bias, then heaven help you, because the selection committee is not going to favor you.
Right, and there's legitimate questions about the strength of the Mountain West next year, because there's changeover in coaches, there's changeover in talent, and so there's uncertainty about how deep the Mountain West will even be next year. So you're not going to. There's questions about how many quality games you're going to get out of your own conference schedule, unlike Utah State had 2 years ago, where it was a lot of quality games in their conference schedule. So you still have to go out and try to find those in the non-conference. Now, can they still go out and do something like they did with Iowa? Play another power conference school at a neutral site for just a one-off game? Yeah, that's still very much a possibility, or even a road game, to some degree, a bye game. But, how much does Utah State need to do that this year compared to what is needed to do in years past? I think that this is a basketball team that has enough returning talent, has a returning coaching staff. I'd like to see them go out and try to get more of those games, even if it's on a neutral site like they did against Iowa. I'd like to see them go out and do a little bit more than what this MTE provides.
Yeah, and they have to. And if they ultimately do that, then nobody's going to care that they played a couple mediocre teams in an MTE. So that's kind of what I want to see now. I'm just not impressed by the MTE. And so unless we have the situation where I don't want to, be conclusive that Davidson and Tulane and Boston College are going to be bad teams.
Because roster turnover and the way things work, you could be one team one season and a totally different team the next.
Yeah, and so that can very much happen. You can very easily have one or all of these other teams be really good, raise the strength of schedule, and we all just look like idiots sitting here in the off season at our desk talking to a mic because, things, again, can change. But you got to try and control your destiny as much as you can. Use the, data that you have. Go out there. Go schedule like 3 neutral site games against power conference teams. Since you're not getting those games in your MTE, you got to go out there and find them. Either, or maybe not like having to be power, conference teams. It could be someone like a St. Mary's or, a Memphis, like somebody
who has a decent track record.
Yeah, like a really good mid-major program.
Solid team out of the A10.
Yeah, that's something.
Or the American.
That's something you could go out and do. A VCU. Again, just one of these really good mid-major teams in lieu of yet another neutral site game against a power conference team. But you got to find 3 or 4 of those games now. You got to be able to pick up 3 or 4 games that you're pretty confident can be quad 1 wins. Obviously, there's not a ton you can control there, but like last year, they had, Iowa, that was flirting with, in North Texas, and I think even St. Bonaventure at one point. They were all flirting with being quad 1 wins. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't.
St. Mary's game.
Yeah, St. Mary's. Like, you had basically those 4 games, like, hey, that carried their non-conference schedule in a lot of ways. And not all of them ended up as quad 1 games, obviously, but they were all quality wins. So go out there, find your 4, somewhere between 3 and 5, I think, games that you believe can be quad 1. Some of them won't be. Some of them will be. Maybe there's a surprise somewhere else in your schedule, and you can end up with potentially 6, like, potential quad 1 games. But they got to go out there and test themselves where they have more continuity. They have the coaching staff. They have more of the players. Go out there and test yourself, see if you can have a magical season. You had a really good season last year. Go out and try and have something magical akin to what Danny Sprinkle brought, where they win the Mountain West title, get to the NCAA tournament, and obviously get the win in the first round. Try and have something at that level or even better, which you can really only get. You can only get those super high seeds if you can get the good non-conference schedule, and combine that, with what we're hoping is going to be a really talented roster.
435-339-0321. If you want to chime in on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, we have to take a time out, but we'll continue the discussion. A lot more to get through, and some news today. I don't know if it's news, but an interesting report from John Wilner, who covers the Pac-12, looking at Oregon State and Washington State, kind of reactions to the media deal that was announced earlier this week for their upcoming football season, and getting a little bit more into the numbers, comparing those two schools and really contrasting them as well. What are they going to look like with the new Pac-12 emerging next year? We'll get into that next here on the Full Court Press.
When grid failures and severe weather cause power outages, your business might take a hit, or at home, you could lose your refrigerated food storage. Generac Standby Power Solutions help ensure an uninterrupted power supply. Generac is the #1 brand of standby generators. Get yours today from Golden Spike Electric, your trusted source for safety and security. Golden Spike Electric, powering your peace of mind. Online at gscgenerators.com or call 257-3016. They also service other models.
Happy Mother's Day to every mom and woman out there. You truly are amazing. At The Sportsman, we have amazing women who order amazing clothing and shoes for the mom in your life. Come in and let us help you find something that is truly unique from Birkenstock, Cool, the North Face, or Fjallraven. Now is a great time to buy an e-bike, or if you just need her bike tuned up for summer riding, we can help with that too. Happy Mother's Day from The Sportsman on Main Street in downtown Logan.
Welcome, friend. Nice to see you again at the Sportsman.
Rely now on a York Affinity Premium Comfort System to keep your home cool and comfortable. The new Affinity systems are smarter and more connected and more efficient than ever before. And you can cut your energy costs by as much as 50%. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning, your local York dealer, to schedule a free system evaluation. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning showroom is west of DI and online at advancedheating-ac.com.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air.
Markets are unpredictable, but reaching your financial goals shouldn't be. Adams Wealth Advisors is dedicated to helping you navigate these challenges and ensure you're prepared for every outcome. Whether your financial plan revolves around advanced tax planning, estate planning, business strategies, retirement planning, or investment management, Adams Wealth Advisors team of CPAs, CFPs, and CFAs will provide the expertise needed to help you reach your financial goals. Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com. That's AdamsWealthAdvisors.com for more information or to schedule an appointment.
Need a reliable partner for your medical needs? Look no further than Triton Medical and Transportation. We offer top quality medical soft goods right here in your community. From incontinence supplies and oxygen needs to medical transportation. Whatever you need to stay comfortable and healthy, we've got you covered. Trust Triton Medical and Transportation, caring for our community with every step, every mile. Call us today at 435-557-6687 or visit us online at mytritonsupply.com. Triton Medical and Transportation, because your health matters.
Talking the sports you care about. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Hang out at Cache Valley's Community Cinco de Mayo celebration on Saturday. It's from noon to 8 p.m. at the Cache County Fairgrounds. There'll be live music, there'll be mariachi bands, fun entertainment for the whole family available, and of course, dozens of food trucks and authentic Mexican treats. So come check it out. Presented by Members First Credit Union, DD Auto and Salvage, and Presto Products. Free admission. Everyone's welcome. And stop by once or multiple times. Just hang out all day at the Cache County Fairgrounds from noon to 8 p.m. Getting to the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. Got this from 5338. Let me see if I understand. New Mexico sends the Aggies most of their football coaching staff, along with several players. And in exchange, the Aggies send New Mexico one basketball player. Interesting trade. Who got the better end of that deal?
I don't know. Ask me in a few months. We got to see how Bronco actually does. There's a lot being made of Bronco rehauling the culture of the program. But is he actually going to produce wins here at Utah State? He kind of was producing some good things at New Mexico. They beat a ranked team, but they still missed a bowl game. There was hype because they were better than they'd been since like 2016 or something to that effect.
Yeah, and they showed signs of marked improvement on the back half of the season.
Yeah, but still catastrophically bad in other areas. Their defense is almost as bad as Utah State's. So we got to see if Bronco's actually going to produce wins here. And we got to see if Dayton Albury is he going to play a bigger role at New Mexico? And I got people telling me that Jared Calhoun didn't know how to utilize Dayton Albury. Is New Mexico going to play him 30 minutes a game? Is he going to average 15 points and 5 assists? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
is he going to be
the coach down there too?
Is he going to be the Donovan Dent replacement, or is he going to split minutes with another point guard? Like, is he going to do the same thing when he goes to New Mexico? We'll find out. And I also got to see what the rest of that New Mexico roster is looking like, because they've brought in a couple of interesting pieces and they've brought in a bunch of pieces that make you yawn a little bit. And you got to be like, let me wait, and I got to wait and see, because I don't see it yet. You have to trust Eric Olin to build that right.
That's true. Yeah. So I would. I think I'd be inclined to take the football trade
probably
over the basketball one.
But like, if Bronco Mendenhall ends up being bad for Utah State, like if he turns out to be a good head coach, leads Utah State to decent success, then yeah, you take that. Football obviously has a bigger impact than one basketball player, but if the Aggies end up having to fire Bronco or buy him out and all that kind of stuff, that's disastrous.
We don't want that. Don't speak that into existence.
No, I don't want to, but like I said, it's a thing.
It's a thing. Interesting report on the the Mercury News, San Jose Mercury News. John Wilner does a great job covering the Pac-12 and really does a really solid job getting into a lot of the financial details surrounding the Pac-12. And he's followed that conference for a long time through its various different iterations. And just because it has drastically changed doesn't mean he's letting up. And he's still focusing on what's going on with the conference. And a recent piece that he has today is kind of a reactionary piece to the announcement earlier this week about Oregon State and Washington State getting media deals figured out for this upcoming football season, but really kind of paints it in a lens of how are those two schools specifically, how are they doing and what path are they on right now? And how, he kind of paints it as they're on different tracks. Oregon State seems to be upbeat and positive, and they're investing in athletics, and they seem to be all in alignment about what they want to achieve and who's involved. Whereas at Washington State, there's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of uncertainty, and they don't seem to be speaking with the same level of enthusiasm as what's going on in Corvallis.
Yeah, and trying to back up that narrative that Wilner is spinning with some of the numbers, and that Oregon State seems to be investing more. They're not being shy, financially speaking, or hesitant, I should say, about spending money and trying to compete as much as possible, at least if I was reading the numbers right. See, Oregon State reportedly looking to spend about $92 million in athletics, compared to $74 million for Washington State. That's a pretty big difference. Like, it's a similar difference to Utah State and a lot of the teams that are getting left behind in the Mountain West. Like, that's the kind of difference, like $20-something million. Now, obviously, these numbers tend to be bigger than most of the incoming Pac-12 schools, but it is interesting that those numbers are also down from what they were a year ago. Oregon State was breaking triple digits, but we're talking like 9 digits technically.
Right.
Over $100 million. And Washington State was just shy of $90 million. So they're both going down in budget. And my biggest curiosity is, how far down are they going to go? They lost out on a ton of money.
Right.
And they're not going to get a lot of that back. What was it, like 25-ish million or something like that? Or I think the one they were seeking, the old Pac-12, they were looking at 25 or 30.
It was around 30.
Something about what they were being offered, and they turned that down because they thought they were worth like 40 or 50.
50.
Yeah. So, but they're going to be lucky to get 10. as opposed to 25 or 30. So they're going to have to cut their budgets. How much are they going to cut them by? And these were programs that, despite the money, hadn't been doing that great anyway. They were kind of bottom feeders in the Pac-12. That's why they got left behind. So are they even going to be able to...
Washington State has had moments.
Yeah, they've certainly both had moments. They've both been good teams. Like, they've both had ranked teams in basketball and football. You know, I think one of them has a good baseball team. I forget which one.
That's Oregon State.
So, like, they're not scrubs, but when you look at their...
They don't draw the numbers.
Yeah. And
the TV viewership.
Yeah, and when you look at their recent years in football and basketball, it's been a bit up and down. It's been a bit iffy. Last year was kind of iffy for both of them. Washington State was good in football for a couple of moments, but then they lost some games, fell out of the top 25. So are they going to be able to compete in this? They're wanting to be the top dogs of the new Pac-12. I don't know if they're going to be, because, like, in football, you've got Boise State, who's going to be better than both of them. If Utah State and Fresno State and San Diego State all get their act together, where those are some teams that were pretty darn good for most of the 2010s, they get their act together, they're probably both going to end up outperforming Oregon State and Washington State. And in basketball, you got Gonzaga, San Diego State, Utah State. Like, at least those three are going to be challenging to be as good, if not better, consistently. So Oregon State and Washington State could be in an interesting position where they're trying to position themselves as the top dogs of the Pac-12. They're the remnants of the old Pac-12, so they should be getting some of that respect. We've got the big budget, the big stadium, and they could end up being outperformed in their own in their own conference.
Yeah, it's a very real possibility. And I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but just life, trying to adjust to life outside of the P4. Last year, Washington State spent $89 million in athletics. This year, they're expected to spend $74 million. Oregon State last year spent $113 million. This year, expected to spend $92 million. So, I mean, they're definitely headed in the wrong direction. And so trying to figure out, how do they continue on and still invest like a P5 school, as they said they would. We're going to continue to invest like a P4 program. But how do you continue to do that and you don't have the money to do that?
Yeah, the money isn't coming in. Like, you have that big old war chest, but it only works for so long. And a lot of it is tied up in whether or not you win a legal battle. And a lot of it's getting thrown away anyway, because you're paying all the lawyers millions of dollars to try and save a couple $1 million here or there.
Yeah, and you talked about the spending level and commitment. John Wilner goes even further to look at coaches' salaries. Washington State had to change their coach here recently, part of the disruption that's going on in Pullman, from the university president to the AD to the head football coach. They hired their new football coach and giving him $1.57 million annually.
As Washington State.
And Spencer Danielson just got a big deal. He just got a big pay raise at Boise State for 2.2. Utah State reportedly giving Bronco Mendenhall just a little over 2.1. And so, but when you look at how he compares across the Mountain West, they say that Wilner's saying that Rogers, who's going to be the new coach, he would rank 6th of the 7 head coaches in football in this newly formed Pac-12.
It'd be one thing if he was going to end up being like 3rd or something like that. Like, if it was just Mendenhall and Danielson, they were like, okay, if it's like 3rd or 4th, okay. But it's the fact that he'd be 6th of 7, like, that's telling.
That's surprising. Yeah. So, kind of what I'm seeing in this is, while that may be kind of tough for them to figure out and navigate this new future for themselves, what this tells me is there's great opportunity for Utah State to step into the Pac-12 and be competitive and relevant from day one at a lot of these major sports, and that they can be, as weird as that sounds, a Pac-12 champion for different sports. But that is the reality that we're walking into here with Utah State. And these other schools, they may have a little bit of a head start in some of the investments that they've made in some of their facilities, but they don't have the funds coming in to support them like they used to. And so Utah State is on a little bit different trajectory than they are. There's opportunity for the Aggies to be competitive, if not near or at the top in a lot of these categories.
Yeah, that's the hope. Is that Utah State, they're on an upward trajectory. Washington State and Oregon State, they're kind of on a downward one right now. They're having to cut their budgets. Utah State's raising theirs. And so that's something that can be a great equalizer there. And it's something where Utah State, if they can continue on an upward trajectory, they can be a really solid team, a really solid program. As you mentioned, they could win the Pac-12 in, a few of these sports. And so it's great news for Utah State. It's also good news for Boise State and San Diego State and Fresno and in Colorado as well. Because for all those teams, all those schools, it's a step up. For Washington State and Oregon State, it's a step down. Like, that's kind of the understanding of this conference, is that they're having to take a step down to the mid-major, and these other schools are stepping up into, they're, I guess, staying in mid-major G5, but like, it's still a step up. They're going to be the cream of the crop of the mid-major, the G5, whatever you want to call it. So that's just kind of it'll be interesting to monitor that dynamic of how do Oregon State and Washington State manage to kind of hang on to the last little threads of their Power 5 relevance, and how do all these incoming schools from the Mountain West or wherever they're going to come from, the final school to join the Pac-8, for the short term being, like, how are those schools going to handle taking that step up from being in solid mid-major conferences to the best mid-major conference? How do they all handle things when it's just them? They're not playing these bottom feeder schools anymore. How are they going to handle that situation? And can they continue to invest to try and push the envelope closer and closer to trying to be somewhat comparable, or at least more comparable to the power conferences than they would be comparable to the mid-major conferences?
Yeah, so interesting turn of events here, and just an interesting piece with John Wilner. And basically, he's basing some of this off of comments made by these athletic directors for these respective schools that happened this week, and in kind of public forums. And McCoy was on a webinar with reporters, and then Scott Barnes, he was on a podcast. And so that's where Wilner's kind of getting some of this and just kind of their attitudes based on some of these media rights deals. But continue to monitor that and see how that unfolds. But at the end of the day, what's happening with the media rights seems to be positive, but still we don't know what that's going to look like for 2026 and beyond. And they still got to go find that 8th football playing school. The clock continues to tick and count down. And speaking of demands on athletic budgets, some of the changes that are happening in college athletics is causing some schools to drop sports. And some of those coming into the new Mountain West, a number of schools now have had to drop some sports. We'll talk about who they are and what those demands are looking like, and even how that's going to adjust roster limits, how that continues to change. We'll discuss that next here on the Full Court Press.
Do you have a fireplace or stove that isn't working right? Why wait until next winter to get it fixed? Get ahead of the game and get your fireplace or stove serviced now by Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They service everything from Quadra-Fire pellet stoves to heat and glow fireplaces. Get a 20% discount on your next service and labor when you mention this ad. Call 752-7272 or go to advancedfireplaceandstove.com. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, where comfort is their business.
Now here's a concept. You earmark 1/3 of your profits to go back into the community, to local charities. Dex Imaging does that. My name is Anthony Wagoner, and I'd like to share with you what I know about Dex, the company that acquired Valley Office Systems. Dex Imaging is committed to continuing quality customer service while raising the bar to become a strong community partner. Join us in creating the brightest image for tomorrow. Contact us at deximaging.com.
This is Jordan with Primrose Home Care and Hospice, and I'm here with Barbara. Barbara, how did you become acquainted with Primrose?
I had been trying to get another company to come and help me, and I had waited about 2 weeks, and I needed a bath. My neighbor suggested that she would make a few phone calls, and that very afternoon, Mark Stokes was sitting in my front room, and he said, "What do you need?"
Primrose Home Care and Hospice. We're your home team.
This is Catherine Buse with Cache Valley Bank, and we understand that concerns about fraud can weigh heavily on you. Your peace of mind is important to us. That's why we're committed to looking out for you and your family. Our team keeps a vigilant eye on your account. If you ever have concerns or need support, we're just a call or visit away. Whether you need advice or just someone to talk to, our friendly staff is ready to help. We're more than just a bank. We're your neighbors, and we care about your security. Visit your local branch today. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Alpine Home Medical has been around for over 25 years. Can you believe that? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent. What keeps us coming to work every day? We're passionate about caring for you. From home and bathroom safety to transportation, mobility, recovery, oxygen, sleep, and more, come into any of our 10 locations today and let us take care of you.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Visit us at alpinehomemedical.com.
When you think about Mom, what you see is dependable, always there when you need her, understanding, caring, and definitely forgiving. She takes care of the kids, cooks, cleans, grocery shops, clipping the coupons to stretch your dollars further. She is an accountant, chauffeur, a tutor, a counselor, and sometimes a referee. She is a hands-on, micromanaging CEO of the house, who in some cases also has a second job. This Mother's Day, get her something special at Jarek's Fine Jewelry in Logan. Make it special, make it Jarek's.
It doesn't matter who you root for. The Full Court Press has all the high school sports covered. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Young Power Sports of Logan is located at 1903 South, 800 West. And you can also check them out online, youngpowersportslogan.com. They sponsor the Full Court Press text line, 435-339-0321, if you want to chime in. Been talking about the Utah State participation in the Charleston Classic multi-team event. And the interesting report from John Wilner about spending levels at Washington State and Oregon State, kind of and their respective reactions to their new media deal for this upcoming football season. But if you want to weigh in on those topics or others, we always love to hear from you, 435-339-0321. But with the changing landscape, if you will, for college athletics and the changing demands financially on schools that want to try to keep up in certain areas, some schools just can't. They're having to make some hard choices. And some schools, too notably, coming into the Mountain West soon, have chosen to cut programs, cut sports in order to stay solvent and able to compete in other areas.
Yeah, they're trying to trim the fat, so to speak, on with these other programs where these programs aren't bringing in basically any money. They're basically, it's, they have to spend money on coaches and travel and all these different things. And so they're having to say, look, if you're only a financial drain and we're wanting to go max investment as they're moving up into these new conferences, then they feel like they have to make that move. And so that's what you're seeing, as you mentioned, a couple of future Mountain West schools. Grand Canyon, who's making the jump. I believe they're supposed to make the jump this year, although I then saw some conflicting info on that, so now I'm not so sure anymore. Because they were going to go to the West Coast Conference this upcoming season, but then they reneged on that. They're going to the Mountain West.
Yeah, they skipped right over that.
Yeah, but I've seen conflicting information as to whether or not they will join for sure this season. So I need to figure that out exactly. But UTEP also coming in to the Mountain West as a full-time member. And so both Grand Canyon and UTEP have cut a sports program. UTEP cutting their women's tennis team and Grand Canyon cutting their men's volleyball team. So programs that are just getting slashed as they're moving up, theoretically supposed to have their budgets increase and be able to support these teams. Like, imagine Utah State just cutting one of their programs. And in a moment when they're supposed to be on an upward trajectory, but schools like Grand Canyon, UTEP feel like they have to start, pinching pennies. They have to, skimp a bit financially. And so it's really unfortunate to see these programs get cut. I mean, I saw a clip from, I think it was a news segment where they were talking to Grand Canyon, men's volleyball players who are now all in the transfer portal. They're all leaving. They don't know where they're going to go. They don't know if they're even going to land somewhere. They didn't get a choice. When they went there, they were told you're going to be part of this program, and you could be there 4 years, get a degree, and they're being told you don't have a spot here anymore. And it's a little frustrating to see that happen. Where you have athletes that were promised college education. This is what college athletics is supposed to be about. You're supposed to be able to go to school and get a degree and represent your university as a member of a sports team. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, no, we're going to cut you guys and we're going to funnel money into this other thing.
Yeah, it's a tough position for a lot of these schools, especially for those who have to carry resource-dependent programs, that resource-expensive programs, which is interesting that Grand Canyon does this because they don't have a football team. So they're just leaning in on
but if they don't have
resources
a football team,
for basketball.
If they don't have a football team, they're not getting football team revenues.
No, I mean,
so they don't have that revenue stream.
True.
Because football is by far a net positive for basically every school that has it.
It is the major moneymaker for programs. And even bad schools with bad football programs still have football generating the most income for them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when Utah State was bad at football, they were still making more money off football than they were basketball.
Well, and part of that is you could go play one game somewhere.
That's true.
And get a big check to help fund your other athletic programs.
Yeah, if you go play one game at Alabama and get paid $2 million, that's more than the net revenue you're going to get from an entire basketball season. And that's just one game.
Yeah. So, so Grand Canyon is cutting, UTEP is cutting. How many other schools will have to cut sports? And as of right now, it doesn't appear that Utah State's doing any of this, but the strain on athletic budgets is going to increase with, especially because of this new House settlement that says you got to start paying your players.
Yeah, because teams these schools are really feeling the crunch to invest as much as they possibly can. They've been squeezing their donor bases dry for every ounce of NIL funding they can get. And a lot of that's now going to go into revenue sharing, donating back to the school instead of a collective. Because I think collectives are going to kind of slowly fade away. I know some are sticking around for now, but they'll eventually fade away, or they'll just become a donation arm toward revenue sharing. They'll just kind of shift their focus if the organizations themselves remain around. But yeah, everyone is squeezing as hard as they can to get every last bit of money, and what's that all going to lead to? We're already seeing, conferences and schools look toward private equity. They're going to do a deal with the devil where they're going to, accept the money from private equity just because they have to get more money, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to compete. And so you're going to have this arms race, and it's going to result in a lot of changes for a lot of schools. With Grand Canyon, UTEP, it's them cutting programs. I don't know if we'll see programs get cut with these high major teams, but they'll certainly think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that, penny pinching will end up driving regional conferences back into existence, because UCLA and USC aren't going to be happy about their travel budgets. And when you're trying to raise as much money to revenue share, every bit's going to count. So I don't know what the full extent of the knock-on is going to be, but I feel like we're already seeing a pattern of at least lower-level schools really starting to reconsider, what they're able to fund. There was the one school that went to the NCAA tournament this year, but then, they're going to transition down to Division III. I forget the name of the school, but then you also see, again, schools cutting athletic programs. or athletic, teams. So again, what the full extent of the impact of all this is going to be, I can't tell you, but we are seeing, I think what we're seeing with all these cuts and all that, it is a direct result of this arms race we're seeing with money in college sports.
Right. It's moving to a different level now. There's always been an arms race. It's just now it's moving into a different level and a different stratosphere.
Yeah.
9315 on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. How much expenses are in tennis? Did that really help to cut it? Well, you've got the biggest expenses are the salary to the coaching staff, the value of scholarships to those players, scholarships, having to commit to room and board for them, travel to different games. Now, was it Grand Canyon or was it UTEP? They didn't even have an on-campus facility, so they're having to rent space or lease space somewhere else off campus to hold their games.
Which is pretty much what Utah State does.
For a lot of tennis. For a lot
of tennis.
Yeah.
Not for any of the other programs.
No.
But for tennis, they're using the Academy and Racket Club for their stuff. Although they have tennis courts on campus. I don't know if those get used a whole lot by the tennis team itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of weather dependent for sure.
That's true. And I think that's a bigger reason why they use the Sports Academy and Racket Club.
Especially for a spring sport.
Yeah, for a
Cache
spring
Valley.
sport. That may have more of an impact on it than how good the courts are or whatever.
And then 6860 texting in, I'm a little bit surprised with Title IX that they're able to cut a women's program, tennis or otherwise.
Yeah, I'm assuming it works somehow. But exactly, I think maybe technically Utah State might be able to get away with cutting one of their programs. They could probably do it without upsetting Title IX. It would just depend on, which one. It would probably have to be a men's sport. Because usually that's the life. Like if you're cutting a men's sport, you're more likely to not upset Title IX. Because men's sports, there tend to be more of them anyway.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick time out here in the Full Court Press. When we come back, it's Thursday. So we got to do Pick 6. Trying to predict what will happen this weekend.
This is Jay at Daryl's Appliance. When your appliance needs service, who should you trust? May I suggest a company with 50 years of experience serving locals? A company with factory-trained technicians with over 100 years of combined experience? A company that stocks thousands of parts to service your appliance? That's Daryl's Appliance. When you need your appliance repaired right, quickly, think Daryl's West on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
Spend less time at the post office. With Formax and Mint mailing systems from Les Olson IT, you can quickly, accurately, and easily process your outgoing mail and even save on postage. Fold your documents, stuff and seal your envelopes, print addresses, weigh and measure to apply proper postage, all with the click of a button. With multiple model options available, you're sure to find a Formax solution and Mint mailing device that perfectly fits your business needs.
Les Olson IT.
Listen up, Aggies. It's graduation week and the final week of the blue and white sale at Locker 42. Discounts on all the coolest Aggie gear. This week, find 20% off all novelty and alumni items like water bottles, license plate frames, flags, pennants, blankets, diploma frames, and seat cushions. Show your Aggie pride loud, proud, and now for less. Great sale prices on Locker 42's big wall of hats and mini apparel items. See more at locker42.com. It's the store where Aggie spirit lives. Locker 42, downtown Logan.
Join the show by calling 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
If you need your parts, oil, and other thing, filters at Napa Auto Parts, check it out online, Napa Online. And get your stuff ordered. You can go pick it up in store. Napa Auto Parts at 4 different locations between Preston and Providence. We don't have a lot of time for the fun sounder here.
Yeah,
so
we got to
Jason,
speed through this.
We'll just go through our Pick 6 lines for this weekend. We're trying to predict what will happen. And then on Monday, we recap it all and see who did the better job. So I won last week. This has been a back and forth here recently.
Yeah, about the last 3 times been back and forth.
So I'm going to let you go first.
All right. So how many Game 7s will we have in the NBA first round? There's 3 games that are playing a Game 6. Is That's 3 potential game 7s, but I set the line at 1.5.
I'm going to take the under.
I'm going to take the under as well.
Okay.
Utah State softball. How many home runs will they hit in their 3-game series against Boise State? Starting today, I set the line at 2.5.
Against Boise State?
Against Boise State.
I'll take the over.
I was going to take the over. I'm going to take the under, though.
Okay.
All right. Nikola Jokic. Will he have a triple-double in Game 6 against the Clippers? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to say no.
Sam Merrill plus minus in his game, first game 1 in their series against the Indiana Pacers on Sunday. I didn't say if he'll start or not. Just what's his plus minus? I set it at plus 3.5.
I think he'll do better than that.
Okay. I will take the under.
Okay.
Cubs at Brewers. It's a good rivalry series.
Under.
Sunday, Cubs by 1.5.
Under.
I'll take the over. And then on Sunday, it's the Miami Grand Prix for F1, be on ABC. A McLaren finish, 2.5.
Under means better, right?
Yes.
Yeah, under.
Okay, I'll take the over.
All right.
And then our tiebreaker, Mountain Crest baseball run differential versus Skyview in their playoff series this weekend, 4.5.
I'm going to say under. I've only got 5 seconds, so.
I'll take the over. So there we go.
Didn't have time to think about it.
That's our pick 6 for the week.
The Lakers made that big move to bring in Luka with LeBron. Expectations soared. Star power sells in L.A. And on paper, this was Hollywood's next big thing. And for a stretch, it looked like a big hit. Doncic brought his usual brilliance, and LeBron turned back the clock, and the Lakers had the makings of something dangerous. But playoff basketball doesn't care about names. It exposes flaws, and L.A.'s were hard to miss. The team was thin on depth, defense, especially rim protectors, with the departure of Anthony Davis. And against a physical, disciplined team in Minnesota, that showed. One playoff win wasn't the script anyone expected. But given the timeline with the roster construction, maybe we should have seen it coming. The Luka trade happened late, and the Lakers never truly had an offseason to build around their new star duo. Rob Pelinka, the GM, and company now have the summer to retool. If they fall short after that, maybe it's time to hit the panic button. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.